day 12, and we're on Facebook now. Hello. And I apologize. I don't know why the Facebook feed, the last couple of videos, has gotten a little bit spazzy in the middle and a little bit blurry and weird. So not sure what that's about, but we'll figure that will not happen this time. But thank you for hanging in there if you did, and even if you were hopefully able to still enjoy listening to the content coming through. So yes, gosh, it's really dark on this phone, and I had a funny moment where I actually broke my phone yesterday. So I'm on an old phone, but it seems to be working here for now until I upgrade. Yes, so welcome back to May Mood Lift and Shift Day 12. And these tools I'm talking about today are tools that we were born with, tools that are part of our physiology, part of our being human. And I see now, in looking at all the pieces we've been looking at over this series, I see now that things like tears, crying, and laughter are both such powerful energy medicine that we can really become aware of and play with and use more and even enjoy and employ more. I've noticed as I've gotten more connected with myself through these pieces and had a chance to just look at what is happening within me more often, look at some of the old wounds and traumas, that I have of being human like we all do, patterns, beliefs, memories, worries, realizations. As I've embraced both of these tools, but first let's talk about tears and crying. As I've embraced that more and gotten more in a place that I see how valuable that is for me, so I allow it more. I even might invite it, or even sometimes when I sense that something might bring up that emotion for me, I'll allow it. Instead of maybe in the past, I think the way I was more with those types of emotions was, only letting that happen sometimes, and really only in dramatic moments having tears. And for a lot of us, we don't cry very often, and we never do. Something that got me thinking about this is in being a mom and starting to be around babies and kids and other people's kids, I started to notice how babies cry every day. Like, that was even new, that every baby cries every day, no matter what. Even if they get all their needs met, even if everything's fine, they cry. That's just part of their physiology and part of how they communicate, right? And then even as I watched my kids get older and in the toddler years and the preschool years and the big emotions, and it was just really fascinating to watch how a lot of kids still would have some tears at some point each day. So I started to wonder, if there's an age when we stop crying every day, and what if we're more like built to cry every day as part of finding our balance, as part of releasing stuff, as part of tuning in even and reconnecting, and even just allowing the energy medicine of it. And then also what we now know about things like tears is that part of the physiology of tears, the way our bodies are wired and built, is that the tears are part of what is going to elicit serotonin, which is one of those mood boosting chemicals that we find in even the antidepressant meds and such. So tears are a built-in antidepressant method that we were born with. And so I'm curious about, like, how many of us might be less depressed if we cried more, right? And I think this is so interesting because we see something like crying a lot, or even every day. A lot of us would worry about ourselves if we heard a description like, oh, I've been crying every day lately. That might even be a description of what we call depressed. But I'm kind of interested in the flip side of letting ourselves go through that process and noticing perhaps how we feel better after we cry, and how it actually feels to cry than to not when we feel like we need to, right? Like there's nothing worse than pushing off tears and that feeling of like choked upness when you're trying to hold it back. So the actual crying can actually be really satisfying and a good release. And again, just to consider the chemical release that's happening when we cry. Whoops. My Instagram turned off for some reason. We'll restart. Yeah, like how much better and different would we feel if we were using that more, and much less like not resisting it, but even just allowing it more as part of our physiology, as part of our being human. This crying, just the allowing of tears as a process, like an important thing. And I know some of us will start to tune into that can feel good and kind of know when we want to watch something or listen to something that might bring up those tears, like kind of owning, like I need this cathartic moment. So yeah, that's an example of allowing that more. But I also find for me, tears have been a beautiful form of connection also. Like often those tears are tears of awe or gratitude as I'm looking at my life and like how things work out or how blessed I am, or, really get into the feelings of thankfulness. That is more maybe a spiritual approach, that often the tears will be part of that reconnecting too. Whether it's just kind of remembering some of that and allowing some of that. And then I love that some of the teachers I've learned from, like Abraham Hicks, will talk about how tears release resistance. And so that's important to see, because I think if we just see that there's this thing called resistance that we seem to do with ourselves when it has to do with anything in life. So whenever we do let ourselves cry, we're releasing resistance. And so becoming more open to what is, becoming more open to moving through whatever we're in, and even becoming more open to the solutions, I would say, and the connecting possible through this. So tears as a great thing, and for us to even encourage that in others, and to just not be worried about someone. I think it's nice to be there and be ready to support someone if they're crying, but not to try to turn it off. And I think that's super interesting with our kids. Like, how can we help them keep using crying as an important tool and not start to teach them that that's not okay or not mature or manipulative even, that it's part of our physiology that can help us, and that probably the more that we let ourselves cry for the good and the bad, the better we're going to feel. And physically, health-wise, we're going to be a lot better off, right? Probably keeps our immunity up to be letting ourselves cry and to be just allowing that natural process. And yeah, like what if we were born to cry every day? And what if we got back to that as part of a rhythm? It's kind of an interesting thing to propose, but I'm really finding it interesting, like emotionally, to embrace that. And again, it doesn't usually even mean tears about feeling terrible. But even if it is, it always helps me feel better to just let myself feel that, right? And the tears is part of that, but the tears are part of what's also shifting that and lifting that, right? And that's what we're talking about in this program. How can we shift and lift our mood, our mind, our mental health? Cry more is my vote. And to support that in our kids and the people around us and in ourselves. And then the other flip side is laughter is a really cool energy tool as well, which I've noticed and is super fun to realize and play with. So it's so wonderful to see how laughing and laughing with others, laughing to ourselves, is another thing that's like this physiological response that actually I should look it up, but obviously you'd probably assume it must boost serotonin too. It's funny that I've never really researched that one, but I would be pretty sure. Yeah, that's interesting. Instagram's just going short today on this old phone of mine. But yeah, to also build in laughter more as a medicine. And that's where you'll hear stories of people healing things like cancer through watching funny movies. So it's like, holy crap. Obviously, laughter boosts immunity, totally stimulates our healing response. It really brings us present, right? There's a presence with humor, even, and comedy. And you really have to be present to even make a good joke, right? So there's a lot of ways that tears and laughter bring in a lot of what we've been talking about with yoga and meditation's approach to life and being human, and how that can help with mood, mind, and mental health. But yeah, I'm bringing it up as one of the tools that we as people into a more connected life, which may be called yoga or not, and if we're into things like meditation and even spirituality, that we could say, let's enjoy, let's employ those tears and that laughter as such an important part, actually, of being human, being healthy, being tuned in, tapped in, feeling good, right? In our flow, body wise, mind wise, mood wise, emotions wise, right? To allow a more full scope and fluid experience of emotions, like literally fluid, right? With the crying. Yeah. And then just kind of notice maybe when you do find yourself having a laugh or the tears, how you might notice more now, how that shifts you and lifts you, and just even be thankful for that as this like built-in part of being human, that even just that's where the perspectives part is like, oh, just realizing that or remembering that shifts us, right? Much less doing it any differently. So that's where these approaches are so much about the perspectives and the psychology as much as the practices, right? And it's the perspectives and the psychology that we bring into the practices. So the practices of tears and laughter, we're bringing in the psychology and the perspectives that this is good for us as part of a healthy human life. And actually, even a high vibe life, right, is going to include more tears and laughter. So, yay, let's enjoy. And thanks for being here. Super stoked to share this with you. Love you so much. Let's enjoy the ride, shall we? Namaste. Mm.